Good afternoon and welcome to the judges, teachers, guests, and participants of FRSIS 2022. Before we continue with the presentations, I would like to introduce our judges today. The Chief Judge is Mr. Abu Bakar Ngah, Distinguished Toastmasters. The second judge is Ms. Nur Adilah binti Sulimai from Sekolah Menengah Sains Sabah. The third judge is Ms. Nur Azlina binti Mat Saad from the Malay College Kuala Kangsar, and I, Muhammad Hazim bin Ruzaimi from the Malay College Kuala Kangsar, while the timekeepers Muhammad Zikri Shazwan bin Mahathir and Ammar Nur Hakim bin Azmi are from Sekolah Dato Abdul Razak. Allow me to read the rules. Each team should consist of presenters and a technical assistant. The presentation must focus on the sub-team assigned to the team. The duration of the presentation should not be more than 10 minutes. The bell will be rung once at the 9th minute and twice at the 10th minute. A question and answer session will be conducted after each presentation. Now, I would like to invite Sekolah Menengah Sains Seri Putri to present. Please welcome.
Test. COVID-19. It will disappear. One day, a miracle will happen and it will disappear. Greetings may be to the honorable judges, loyal timekeeper, respected teachers, and my fellow contestants. So we are the representatives from Sri Putri Science Secondary School. Will be explaining our research on revitalizing the tourism industry after the pandemic. So here I present our beautiful team members and our supervising teacher. This is a table of contents for our presentation. Now let's move on to the objective. The first one is to compare the tourism activities among citizens before and during the COVID-19. Next, we'll be explaining about the importance of the tourism sector towards the Malaysia's economic growth and the impact of COVID-19 on tourism sector due to people and economy. And the last objective is to plan the strategies in restoring the development tourism industry. As for the research methods, we have conducted a survey and were distributed to the citizens, and literature review were done to obtain various information from trusted sources.
Ladies and gentlemen, how did the pandemic affect the tourism industry? Well, lockdown, that is the answer. As you can see in the statistics shown, there was a 68% reduction in the tourist arrivals in the first half of 2020 in comparison to the first half of 2019. So, we will explain this in 4 aspects. The first aspect is accommodation. Due to the reduction of guests, 55 hotels were permanently closed down and 86 were temporarily seized. However, for airlines, airline workers experienced salary cuts. KLIA Express and KLIA Transit also experienced a reduction in the number of passengers, as you can see in the statistics shown. Next, as for tourist attractions such as Legoland and Sabah, there was also a reduction of tourists there. As you can see here in the statistics shown, from 2019 to 2021, there was a linear decrease in the number of tourists in Sabah. However, fortunately, in 2022, there was a significant increase in the number of tourists. And lastly, for handcraft workers, logically, how would handcraft workers gain their income if there was no one who would buy them? So, as you can see here, there was a decrease in sales revenue of 182.7 million ringgit for handcraft workers. This causes suffering for people who actually depend fully on this field. Luckily, the government of Malaysia has announced the reopening of Malaysia's international borders, which enables tourists to come to Malaysia and hence enhances the tourism industry of the country.
Okay, so now let us move on to the importance of tourism towards Malaysia's economic growth. So this is Malaysia's gross domestic product throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. And it can be seen here that in 2020, it was decreased, but luckily in 2021, it is increased. And so next. Now, from the statistics shown here, we can see that the tourist arrivals in Malaysia keeps on decreasing. But from the graph over here, which is in the year of 2021, we can see that there is improvement in the month of December compared to November. Next, we will talk about the results on the survey that was distributed among the citizens. So the first question that was asked was the reason of why traveling is vital towards the economic development, which will be explained further later. And next is this traveling service, which was the most affected during the pandemic, which was accommodations. And lastly, the fact that most people had gone through difficulties during the COVID-19. So from what we have gathered, the first importance is tourism leads to employment and income. So as we all are aware of, tourism is one of the largest industries in Malaysia. So the fact that more jobs are going to be available makes it an opportunity for people to work in the various sectors. And also, it can reduce poverty and also increase our country's standard of living. Next is it increases economic activities. As we all know, tourism can lead to high demand of products. Therefore, this can increase the consumption of goods and services, which makes the manufacturers of Malaysia able to create or produce more products and in the end causing higher stock prices. And lastly is the fact when you improve infrastructure environment investments. So we know that this thing is highly profitable and therefore can lead to more high quality infrastructure. And so these not only connect citizens to endless opportunities, but can also attract the destination, can increase the attractiveness of the destination.
Moving on, what were the initiatives taken by the government, right? So the first step was the economic stimulus that includes the tax exemption for hotels, provision of 30 million ringgit for country's tourism permitting agency, and also discount on bills for hotels. To add, special holiday packages were also done to boost interest for tourists.
Next, moving on to the second government efforts by improving the public transport services. A total of 100 ringgit is offered to the Malaysians for domestic travel via airlines and railway. On top of that, places such as airports are fully sanitized to ensure the tourists are completely confident in flying off to their respective destination. After that, additional specific health safety guidelines such as mask, COVID-19 self-test, and mandatory vaccines for tourism service providers and travelers are vital to break the infection chain of COVID-19. In addition, the Malaysia Truly Asia campaign is conducted to commercialize the Malaysian tourism through a global network. This initiative offers more than 100 promotional activities. So it also released its strategic and marketing plan from 2022 until 2026, which greatly emphasized on digital adoption, innovation, health, and safety. For your information, this campaign, Malaysia Truly Asia, has successfully pulled off more than 1 million tourists into our country.
Okay, and lastly is by having collaborations. MOTAC has collaborated with local hotels and online platforms that promote holiday and hotel packages. They have also collaborated with MyBHA and Karyaneka. And other than that, Cuti Cuti Malaysia has also collaborated with airline companies that promote to increase the connectivity of domestic tourism, because from the graph shown here, it can be seen that the number of domestic tourism is decreasing.
Now, consequently, we're moving to our master plan in redeveloping Malaysia tourism industry. Our main focus is to promote the country's well-being. So as for the first, starting from 31st December 2020, the UV lights were installed in conveyor belts that is used to sanitize the luggages. So after we have brainstormed, we decided to take a next step by installing the UV lights in every public transportation in Malaysia, which highly focusing on aeroplanes that produces electromagnetic energy. This energy has the ability to reduce the reproduction of microorganisms. This idea is to provide a better safety assurance to passengers for their peace of mind.
Next, by the usage of social media, we can promote the country's health, tourism, and insurance. While Malaysia offers travel insurance like TripCare 360 insurance, which features cashless medical care for tourists. So how do we actually promote them? Well, we can produce commercials in various languages to help tourists around the world that visit Malaysia. Second, promote the healthcare application such as the Doctor on Call Malaysia, which allows tourists to make an online order for medical supply that later will be delivered at their doorstep at any time. For future improvement, we recommend Doctor on Call to offer promotional prices to tourists that visit Malaysia. And lastly, let's compare Malaysia to rural countries. Well, for your information, Malaysia ranks 27 out of 195 countries around the world according to the Global Health Security Index 2021. While we are very positive that in Malaysia, clean water, medicines, and healthcare workers are always available for everybody, including the tourists who visit Malaysia.
Besides, live stream and collaboration with tourists and social media influencers helps in giving an overview of the excitement and the attractiveness of the environment of the places. Also, it promotes and provides helpful information on your chosen destination. Furthermore, by collaborating with widely known influencer, it helps to attain more views on the digital platform where the audience get to experience the genuine feel of the trip. Videos to promote tourist attraction can increase the production of more quality contents. Let's take travel articles and advertisers, for example. These contents must be promoted in both international and domestic markets for us to get exposure on and about in tourism industry.
The third use of social media focuses on creating more 360 VR contents about Malaysia's astonishing and alluring views. This is to promote Malaysia's tourism industry with an advanced approach, as these 360-degree VR contents would pop up on your social media more. And our last step is by introducing a new traveling system named Marry Around Malaysia. Marry Around Malaysia includes all payment fees, and it also promotes direct access for the tourists to the tourist attraction so that they won't have to wait in line for a long time. We will also introduce an application which gives updates about the problems faced by public transportation, such as traffic jams and technical difficulties. Therefore, we hope our presentation was beneficial in restoring the tourism industry of Malaysia. And that is all from us for today. Thank you so much for listening. Have a nice day.
I would gladly invite the audience to ask questions to the presenters.
No question. Okay. I just start a question. You mentioned the use of VR, AR, and all this on the travel, to help further for the travel industry. What other technology do you think that can be used together with VR, AR, or whatever it is to further, enhance or promote the tourism industry in Malaysia?
One thing that have brainstormed before the presentation was actually to provide like robots, like right now there's like robots working in restaurants to send them food. And what we thought is we want to introduce more robots like that, especially at places where tourists are focusing on tourists, such as the airport. We would like to introduce more robots in the airport so like they can bring their luggages or their trolleys. So this would actually enhance the tourism industry because tourists would be very excited to see the robots working in the airport. And this would enhance the tourism industry in the future.
So, okay, thank you very much for that informative presentation. My question to you is that right now Malaysia is suffering in quite an economic crisis. Poverty is now an issue, and people are put off work. How do you think that the tourism industry is going to prevail when people don't have sufficient money to actually go on vacations?
Well, then, that is why we actually provided the day pass. We think day passes are like a day pass is like a ticket where it is sold at a reasonable price, and that reasonable price includes all the fees that the tourists need. So if they purchase the day pass, then the day pass will include everything that they need, including transportation, including food, and their entrance to the tourist attractions. So by introducing the day pass, we would think that they would not have to spend so much money, as by purchasing one package, they would have access to everything that they need in their vacation. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Sekolah Menengah Sains Sri Putri, for your presentation.
Thank you for listening.
Good afternoon and welcome back everyone to FRSIS 2022. Now, I would like to invite Sekolah Menengah Sains Tuanku Menawe to continue with their presentation. Please welcome.
New Year's Eve 2019. Chinese health authorities reported an increasing number of people exhibiting flu-like symptoms such as dry cough and fever before getting pneumonia, and for some, it turned fatal. Doctors quickly named the disease COVID-19, and before time, it quickly spread across the globe. What were the impacts of these on our economy? How did we respond to this? And what can we do in order to improve? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and a very good morning I bid to everyone present in this room today. We are Munawar's Heritage from Sekolah Menengah Sains Tuanku Munawe, and we are here to present to you the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic on our economy, and also what has the government done in order to solve these problems, and also to suggest solutions, further measures that can be taken in order to improve. My name is Shoaib bin Shahnun, and I will be the lead presenter for today. I'm accompanied by Mikael Demian, and I'm also joined by my lovely team, Mr. Luman Hakim and Daniel Haikal.
Before diving any deeper, let's get to know about what we're dealing with first. COVID-19 is a respiratory disease that is thought to be originated from bats before it was first transmitted to humans. A common misconception that must be made clear is that COVID-19 is not the virus itself. The name of the virus that causes the disease is the severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2, or known as SARS-CoV-2 for short, which causes the disease we all know, coronavirus disease 2019. Patients that contract the disease are known to exhibit flu-like symptoms such as a mild cough, loss of breath, loss of smell and taste, and coughing. This disease is thought to be transmitted through airborne particles. That means that simply inhaling air that contains the virus can put you at risk of infection. The first case of COVID-19 in Malaysia was recorded in January 2020 when a passenger from China has tested positive for COVID-19 in Johor en route to Singapore. From September to December in the same year, we see a massive spike in cases reported nationwide, reaching over 100,000. Our research today focuses on three sectors that we believe is crucial to our Malaysian economy. Our sectors are healthcare, education, tourism, and hospitality. We chose these sectors because we believe that they play a large role in our GDP, and they also
And they also played a big role in our nation's response to COVID-19, ladies and gentlemen. So we conducted an in-depth literature review in order to gain a baseline understanding on the subject matter. And so without further ado, let's move on to our first aspect, which is tourism and hospitality. A recent study conducted by researchers from the University of Malaya showed that the Malaysian tourism revenue from 2019 to 2020 dropped a whopping 85.17%, and conservatively, in the next year, it dropped a whopping 98.12%. This is bad because when tourist rates drop, it means less people are coming into our country. And because Malaysia is a heavily tourism-dependent economy, this also means bad news for local businesses and small businesses that depend on tourists in order to stay afloat. Let's look at Bayview Hotel Sendirian Berhad as an example. Bayview Hotels is a big local hotel conglomerate, and in 2020, they reported a net sales revenue drop of 41.34%, and not to mention a net profit margin drop of 11.12%. This all means that a vicious cycle is in place. When people are not coming into our country, this means less people are able to accommodate our hotels and visit these hotels, which means bad news for those local small businesses like your local ice cream parlor, or maybe those people that sell souvenirs at the side of the beach. This also is a vicious cycle because when these hotels don't get customers, this means that their service quality drops by a few years, and it also means that when their quality drops, people will leave negative reviews, and with those negative reviews, potential customers will be uninterested in to come and visit those hotels anymore. And moving on to education with a focus on technical and vocational education and training, we chose this aspect because they had to overcome a big challenge, which is to migrate from face-to-face sessions to online sessions. And why was this a problem? Because technical and vocational training heavily depended on face-to-face interaction between the instructors and teachers and the students, because they needed to see firsthand and first real world experience in order to learn these subjects. And because classes were conducted online, students were not supervised properly and the quality of their education decreased. You might be wondering, ladies and gentlemen, how does this relate to our economy? Well, students are functioning members of society in the future, and they will contribute to our society and economy, conversely, sooner or later. We might not see the effects right now, but we will see them in 10 or 20 years' time. Therefore, we think that technical and vocational educational training is really important in our city today, because we think that they will contribute to our economy sooner or later. And not to mention the mental health effects that it has on our students. People still teach according to the same syllabus and according to the same learning standards that were made for face-to-face sessions. This means that students are put a huge burden, and stress and anxiety are put on the shoulders of our students. And that leads to a decrease in the quality of their education. Why? Because teachers and instructors fail to understand that students are also going through a harsh and complex emotional change because of the pandemic, because of the quarantine being put in place. And lastly, ladies and gentlemen, from a healthcare aspect, from this graph, we see that Malaysia places 17th in the list of countries that are best at handling the pandemic, even in front and ahead of first world countries like the Finland and Norway. But behind this graph, there lies a vague secret. Malaysia's healthcare system almost collapsed when we didn't have enough personal protective equipment or PPE for our healthcare workers to cater to and treat our COVID-19 patients. Not to mention, we also didn't have enough hospital beds in government hospitals to cater to and treat our COVID-19 patients. All of this boils down to the contract doctor issue, which started in 2020. Contract doctors are basically medical graduates who have not yet been fully absorbed into the Ministry of Health, and they were overworked and they were underpaid. So they retaliated, and this caused public distrust in our healthcare system, which led to a reduction in the quality of healthcare provided in our government hospitals. And when public distrust is rampant, people don't really want to send their family or friends to these government hospitals anymore, and people don't trust our healthcare system. And with that, the quality of care also reduces, and people take a longer time to heal, which means a longer period of quarantine is needed in order to curb the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic, which directly deteriorates our economy. Um, so, with that being said, what has our government done in order to curb these negative effects?
As for now, there is no known cure for COVID 19. However, the government has taken multiple alternative methods to help flatten the curve. For example, the Ministry of Health has initiated a nationwide vaccination program starting from the 24th of February 2021. A year after the initiation of this program, we see that this is a very effective solution to the problems that we have in our economy. So to further boost these effects, we suggest to have a periodical booster program, such as the yearly influenza vaccination program. This way, we get better protection against the disease, and we also help to boost the herd immunity. A recent study by the New England Journal of Medicine shows that people who receive the third shot of the vaccine are less likely to contract the disease compared to their counterparts. In the same study, it also shows that the vaccine is much more effective after the third dose. Moving on, secondary school students also had to undergo school rotation schedule, which means half of them had to go for face-to-face classes at school, and the other half went for online classes at the safety of their homes. We suggest to prolong this method until most of the society has taken their booster shots. This way, we get to lower the infection rates and reduce the number of clusters that emerge, while also the students gets the best of both worlds by maintaining their productivity and staying safe.
So, ladies and gentlemen, what can we conclude from what has been said today? In order to put back these industries back in their place before the pandemic started, initiatives such as salary cuts, reductions in the cost of living, and the availability of government aid has been introduced in order to cut down on losses and also to avoid bankruptcy. Governments have also need to stay vigilant in the vaccination programs in order to curb the spread of the pandemic. There is no denying that the COVID-19 pandemic has taken a toll on our economy, and it needs more time and more effort in order to put it back to where it was before the pandemic started. But with everything in the economical sector of losses and gains, time is our only ally. Thank you.
Participants, you may now ask questions to the presenters.
That's a very informative presentation. So, how is your solution going to specifically help in the economy recovery?
Yes, thank you very much for your question. We think by introducing the vaccination programs, by introducing the booster shots, and also by prolonging the rotation schedule of secondary school students, it would help to reduce the number of COVID-19 patients among these individuals, and that would lead to no need to implement quarantine, and that would also mean more time for people and these economical sectors to rebound and regain their traction in order to boost our national economy. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay. My question is, what is your the objective of this research?
Ah.
Your objective.
So the objective of our study is actually to see what sectors in our economy were actually most affected during the COVID-19 pandemic. And when we see these impacts, we wanted to provide solutions and see what things were already implemented by the government to sort of counteract these negative impacts. And also we wanted to introduce our own innovations and solutions to the pre-existing solutions in order to amplify those positive results. So we conducted this research by reviewing literature available online, those articles and studies, and we wanted to see what happened to our economy during the COVID-19 pandemic. And from there, we wanted to see what the government has already done, and we wanted to add on to those. We wanted to add on to those solutions by providing our own innovations, such as the prolonged and periodical booster program, vaccination program, and also the prolonged rotational schedule for secondary school students. So I think that is our main objectives for this study today.
Okay, because I mean, just my comment that the presentation, what you have done, I mean, it's just a broad, overview of everything. We're talking about economy, education, healthcare, and all that. So it's like sometimes when we do our research, we need to be more focused, so that we can go in depth instead
Yes.
of width, so that we can put sufficient finding and sufficient work into it. Because if too wide and with the time limit that you have, it doesn't do justice to what you do. So you're jumping from here and there. You're talking about the booster, and then suddenly goes to the school rotation or whatever. So it's so much things, so many things that you want to discuss. So yeah, I just my comment. So normally when we do research, just focus on certain area. For example, this one, SDG 8 is about decent work, economic growth. Maybe focus on the academic aspect of it and see how you can go deeper into that.
I see.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you Sekolah Menengah Sains Tuanku Menawe for your amazing presentation. Welcome back once again, everyone, to FRSIS 2022. Now, we will continue with Sekolah Menengah Sains Kota Tinggi's presentation. Please welcome.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very pleasant day I bid to all of you. Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever wondered what happened to restaurants that were closed down during the pandemic?
And have you ever questioned why some thrive while the other disappear into the abyss?
Our presentation will shed light to these questions and more. Before we go further, however, let's watch a video introduction of our team. We are a team of 4 students from Sekolah Menengah Sains Kota Tinggi, constituent of Shafia and I, who will be presenting, and Ilman and others who will be assisting us technically. This is the outline of our presentation. So, without further ado, let's go to the research objectives. This study aims to suggest ghost kitchens as a vital force in assisting F&B businesses whilst examining 2 key factors, which are the role of ghost kitchens in aid and its business model sustainability. There are many types of ghost kitchens with differing modes of operation, but in this study, we'll be utilizing the overarching concept of ghost kitchen, which is a physical space for vendors to create food for delivery. Before the pandemic struck, brick and mortar establishments like our average moms and pops restaurants were the main eatery choice. The F&B industry's massive contribution to the economy is apparent with its annual growth rate of 12% since 2010. Movement restrictions force restaurants to only serve takeaways. Even with this measure in place, Malaysia has seen 30,000 businesses fall out since the government first imposed restriction on movement in March. Behavioral conditioning due to the pandemic has left many preferring to order food online rather than physically dining in. This shift has caused an exponential increase in online food delivery traffic. This market has been projected to grow 10 times in the next 10 years, from $35 billion globally to $365 billion by 2030. Hence, our problem statements are that the brick and mortar model is unsustainable in a pandemic. Next, slow economic recovery bars businesses from experimenting with their menu options, which increases marketability. And lastly, the depreciation of monetary value hinders many from opening their dream restaurant. Methodology of research. A literature review was done by reading through articles from journals and also mainstream news providers. We also conducted an interview, a semi-structured interview with an industry figure via Zoom. We interviewed Mr. Nelson Howe, the head of marketing at Ghost Kitchen, to gain further understanding into the inner workings of ghost kitchens. A survey on consumer preference was done as well to formulate our research trajectory. A total of 110 responses were collected by us using Google Forms by all ages. And in this whole survey, 50% or more of them were from the 36 to 45 age range. Now, with that said, we're moving on to factor 1, the role of aiding F&B businesses. The significance of researching this factor is due to it addressing the condition of running a restaurant at maximum efficiency and the challenges of a delivered now customer base. To analyze this factor, a fundamental understanding of systems theory is needed. The relevant systems or the relevant theories in this are synergy and subsystem. Synergy is defined as the condition of generating greater results when individual components work together. And subsystem, as a concept, is where a business or a system is built on subsystems which function to improve by having a very structured organization.
Amani, but I think our synergy is better.
Oh, I see. So, moving on to the hypothesis then. Our hypothesis, the first one, is that if synergy is achieved, then the efficient use of resources is also achieved. Our second hypothesis is that if subsystems are present, then business productivity will increase. First and foremost, we have branding, with its synergy centered around F&B businesses and their consumers. F&B businesses can take action on consumer feedback, both positive and negative, but this is more viable as now these businesses can experiment with their food options without having to worry about having no money left for facility renovation as compared to brick and mortar businesses. This increases or improves their brand presence because now they can create a uniquely created creation which increases their customer base and profitability. Next. Subsequently, when we have synergy amongst these ghost kitchen operators and their own vendors, we have less financial repercussions. Why is this the case? This is because when these ventures actually fail, they are able to come back with returning their own investment by making sure that they can actually pay back when they have losses or gain losses. Because why is this the case? Because brick and mortar businesses, they have a lease which ranges from 400,000 ringgit to 500,000 ringgit in incremental sense, which leaves these businesses in crushing debt. This is going to be solved by having ghost kitchens or utilizing them in the first place. Thanks. Regarding training, right? Ghost kitchen don't require a lot of personnel to operate. This is because ghost kitchen vendors do not have to pay a crew of cleaning crew, people who do businesses at the front end of the stores, like cashiers. They don't have to do all of that. They can now focus on actually improving their chefs with the help of their ghost kitchen operator. The viability of cashing in on a dynamically changing landscape of custom preference requires retraining. Hence, as ghost kitchens facilitate retraining better, it is thus proven that this subsystem's relevancy stands on point. Moving on to logistics then. When we talk about logistics, we know that these ghost kitchen operators are the ones that are handling them. They are the ones responsible. And in this case, because we have people who are handling our logistics, our data, we are able to focus on managing our own brands. And it helps people to have an ease of mind, especially when you have a lot of orders to be catered to from food delivery apps or FDAs. Thus, this subsystem helps these businesses to ensure that their orders are tracked efficiently and are not missed out. So what's next, Shafia?
Next is sustainability of ghost kitchen model. The significance of researching this factor is due to addressing the flexibility to pivot and expand to new market and the increase in online food ordering traffic. The corporate sustainability is the concept that we use to analyze this factor. Social responsibility. Social responsibility is related in catering the basic need for the employees, consumer, and the community. As for the governance pillar is related with conductive to compliance to regulation. As this is our hypothesis. For our first hypothesis is if social responsibility is assured, then employees, consumer, and the wider community will benefit substantially. And secondly, if the governance pillar is upended, then food safety standards are upheld. For our first finding for our first hypothesis is ghost kitchen provided a safe space for FME businesses who just started their business or look a chance to revive. This is because ghost kitchen may an offer about a complete set of professional facility with an affordable price range. This can allow a business to have a compatibility with F&B businesses. And tada, this is the success cases. This is the F&B business that thrived during the pandemic due to utilization with a ghost kitchen. The example are the Halal Guys, Walpole, and Dog House.
Due to the shortage of time, we're very sorry that we have to move on to the implications. Now, the discussion from findings of Factor 1 have proven that ghost kitchens do have synergy and subsystems are present. Therefore, when we link back to the hypothesis proposed, ghost kitchens are able to ensure the efficient use of resources and also promote the actual increasing of productivity within the business itself.
As for the implication, firstly, social responsibility is assured and governance pillar is upended. Thus, ghost kitchen ensure employees, consumer, and the wider community will benefit substantially while complying by food safety standard. In conclusion, the finding recommend that failing F&B business and food startup will benefit tremendously, by venturing into ghost kitchen. This has been proven by successful analysis of both the aiding mechanism utilized and the sustainability of the ghost kitchen. That's all from us. Thank you. Do you have any question?
I would like to invite the members of the floor to ask questions.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. Good
Waalaikumsalam.
afternoon to all. Okay, my question is, how will this ghost kitchen reach customers who hasn't get the privilege of good connectivity?
Thank you very much for that question. The interview that we had with the head of marketing at Cook's Kitchen have already told us about how their marketing strategy works, and this is how they do it. They first go out and actually reach out to these businesses that are having substantial liability in operating their own businesses, like the ones that we see are failing nowadays because of the shrinking economy and movement restrictions that were being upheld during the MCO. And not only that, they also promoted their business models by using social media to cater to these people, because why? Social media is a very accessible option whereby everybody can use it in order for them to know about information at hand. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
And good afternoon. So my name is Ilan Fala from Sekolah Tunggal Abdul Rahman. So my questions go like this. So let's say I'm interested in opening up a ghost kitchen. Is there any requirements to do so? But that's what's my question.
Thank you. But I would like to ask as well, is this as the provider or as someone who's going to go into it as a vendor?
As someone who wants to go into the ghost
Into
kitchen,
as
yeah.
a vendor.
Yes.
So as a vendor, you have to go by these catering websites where you have, like for instance, Cook Kitchen, they have a website for it, and then you can just key in your information, email them, and say, "Hello, I'm actually really interested in being part of your ghost kitchen. Can I be so?" And they usually have like a very, very comprehensive guideline on how you can apply and other documentations as well. I hope that answers your question.
I have a little bit to add. This is why we really recommend to do a ghost kitchen, because you have less risk but big income.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sekolah Menengah Sains Kota Tinggi for such an amazing presentation.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good noon and welcome back to the judges, teachers, guests, and participants of FRSIS 2022. I am Batrisha bint Azhar from Sekolah Menengah Sains Tunku Abdullah Raub Pahang, will be your moderator for the second half of this session. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Sekolah Seri Putri to deliver their presentation.
Ladies and gentlemen, would you believe me if I told you that this little kernel right here is one of the biggest contributors in today's food industry, which is consumed by more than 2.7 billion people on Earth?
And what if I said that this same little kernel is a major industry which aids the supply of famous food brands on supermarket shelves is disappearing? But before we dive in, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very pleasant afternoon I bid to honorable judges,
Brilliant moderator,
esteemed timekeepers,
handy rapporteurs,
and members of the floor. My name is Nurin Maisara.
and my name is Farah Carmelia.
Today, we, the representatives of Sekolah Seri Putri Cyberjaya, will be shedding light on an issue in the agriculture sector, specifically the palm industry. A study entitled Palm Plantations, Fruitless Efforts. Now, starting off, what exactly is economic recovery? Economic recovery refers to the business cycle stage following a recession. In simpler terms, it is a sustained period where a business works hard to improve business activity.
In addition to that, we need to know what is the difference between a pandemic and an endemic, especially with our focus for today, which is the transitional era from pandemic to endemic. Ladies and gentlemen, a pandemic is when a disease outbreak is exponential and it encompasses several countries. With regards to an endemic is when a disease is consistently present but limited to a particular region.
Now, diving into our research background, what is CPO? CPO stands for crude palm oil, which is extracted from the pulp of palm oil fruits. Look at this pie chart right here. Notably, the consumption rate of palm oil worldwide is the highest among any other vegetable oils in the world, 35% to be exact, outranking both sunflower oil and olive oil.
So, why is CPO more demanded than any other vegetable oils? Note, first of all, ladies and gentlemen, realize that it is used in nearly everything and it makes up to 50% of packaged goods on supermarket shelves. Secondly, its functions and properties are never ending. CPO is resistant to oxidation and is stable at high temperatures. And lastly, it is one of the most sustainable oil industry because it practices good agricultural practices as well as zero waste concept.
Furthermore, we need to know how the palm oil industry was before the pandemic. Realize, ladies and gentlemen, that the palm oil industry in Malaysia is the second largest palm oil producers in the world. Its GDP alone contributes up to 36.87 billion Malaysian ringgit, and it caters 1/3 of the world's supply. But Farah, what is happening now to the palm oil industry during the pandemic?
For your information, Nurin, as well as members of the floor, there was a significant shortage of 28,940 laborers. That is to say, the unpicked palm oil fruit for the first 5 months of 2022 was figured at 7.52 million tons. Those losses were caused by a shortage of foreign labor workers that were needed to maintain trees as well as harvest fruit bunches.
Why exactly is this happening, Farah?
The reason why this is happening, ladies and gentlemen, is due to the closure of international borders pertaining to the strict COVID-19 SOPs.
Now that we have a clearer understanding as to why this is a vital issue, let's move on to our problem statement. When COVID-19 hit, the loss suffered by the palm oil industry had left a deep impact in the nation's revenue and ultimately led to a deceleration in Malaysia's economic growth. This is due to factors ranging from foreign labor shortage to the lack of local workforce.
In particular, we need to know what is the objectives for today's studies. First of all, is to recognize how the suspension of foreign workers actually affect the industry. And secondly, is to provide solutions for this exact problem, ladies and gentlemen.
Now, moving on to our research methodology. For this study, we used qualitative correlational research. In short, we analyzed a myriad of scholarly articles from established websites, for example, MPOB's official website, as well as many Malaysian mainstream news. We've also cross-checked with governmental policies to find similar findings. We have also conducted an interview with Malaysian Palm Oil Board personnel, or MPOB, experts from this industry. The purpose of this interview was to confirm our prior findings while also collect additional information regarding our research.
So, after all that research and analysis, what have we found? In general, there are 4 factors that affect production of any kind. Firstly, land. Secondly, entrepreneurship. Thirdly, capital. And lastly, our primary focus for today, which is labor. Ladies and gentlemen, this bar chart represents the percentage of foreign and local workers in job positions in the CPO industry. Look at the bars highlighted in red: harvesters and collectors. 95% are foreign workers. Why are foreign workers more dominant in this particular position, you may ask? Notably, harvesting and collecting fresh fruit bunches, or also known as FFB, needs hard physical labor. Production also relies heavily on productivity and skill. So now, back to you, Nurin.
Thank you, Farah. On the other hand, local workers are more prone to handle machinery. This is due to the stigmatization that circulates labor work in general. This has caused a total loss of 10.46 billion ringgit worth of unpicked fruit in the first 5 months of 2022 alone, ladies and gentlemen. Now, we have decided to provide an analogy. 410,527 ringgit is the average price of a terrace house in Malaysia. Now divide 10.46 billion by that figure and you will still have approximately 25,480 terrace houses. That is a large sum, correct? And yet, all of that has gone down the drain due to an issue that was left unaddressed. Hence, one of the reasons we're here. How are we as a nation going to rise up from the rubbles? Number 1, switch reliance of workforce to local workers. And number 2, mechanization and automation. Firstly, MPOB has done active promotion via seminars and engagements with academic institutions as an initiative to attract more local workforce. And it has increased by 2.7%. However, from our interview, we had gathered that to actually change the mindset of a whole nation is unachievable and unrealistic. This is why we must focus on the youth. We must attract younger generations to get involved in the CPO industry. Realize, ladies and gentlemen, that the scope of job opportunities in this sector is wide, ranging from biotechnology, data collection and analysis, as well as engineering.
Likewise, the innovation of mechanization and automation MPOB has created, which consists of the grabber, chantas, and BTM. As we can see, ladies and gentlemen, there has been an immense amount of investment put into this, which is figured at 60 Malaysian ringgit that has led us to MARCOP, which stands for Mechanization and Automation Research Consortium of Palm Oil. One of the first things I would love to elaborate is the mechanical bunch lifter, or also known as the grabber. We've seen an increase of work efficiency because it used to be that the land-labor ratio productivity was 15 hectares per person. But now, with this innovation, it has increased to a whopping 30 hectares per person. Then, we also have the motorized cutter, which is also known as chantas, that's able to increase employees' productivity by 2-fold. And lastly, we have the bunch transporter machine, which is a machinery equipped with train-like tracks throughout the whole palm plantation to transport fruit bunches. But before I move on, I would love to highlight the challenges regarding mechanization and automation. Realize, ladies and gentlemen, it may look simple at first, but there's a lot of important details that need to be paid attention to. In a nutshell, the labor issues in Malaysia has been a prolonged and structural issue. This is due to the fact that we rely so heavily on foreign labor workers that has made this industry vulnerable to any changes, thus significantly affecting the performance of this industry.
In fact, the pandemic has forced us to highlight this issue in order to retain Malaysia as one of the world's largest palm oil producers. Now, quoting Nur Nadia Kamil, one of MPOB's economic consultant, every invention or effort has its own flaws. Thus, continuous enhancements are needed. That being said, it takes time to achieve desired results. With that,
We thank you.
Now, I would like to invite participants to ask questions.
Could I ask question first? Yeah.
Yes, of course.
Great job. Good presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. The one you mentioned about biotech.
Yeah.
Yes. And biotech used to be a very big thing in Malaysia years ago, but now suddenly, seldom people talk about it. I mean, not many people talk about it. I don't know what happened. So what do you think the government should do more to, to promote biotech so that, we can all improve on our food production and all that? Yeah.
I see. Thank you for that question, sir. With our interview with MPOB, we had gathered that biotechnology is an important and still ongoing process because the palm trees that are now being planted do still have improvements that needs to be done. For example, the height of the palm oil fruit needs to be lower so that they won't need more energy to collect those fresh fruit branches. And others, for example, they need to have more pulp from the fruit so that they can have more oil extracted from the fruits. So yes, based on our interview, we had gathered that there is continuous enhancement that is always needed in this industry. Thank you, sir.
Any more questions from members of the floor? Yes.
Okay, hi and good afternoon. So my name is Ilan Fala from Sekolah Tuanku Abdul Rahman. So based on your slides, you said that more foreign workers are working in this sector. So how to get us Malaysians to work in this sector?
Thank you very much for the question, Ilhan. So based off our interviews with MPOB, we already told you that first, we do realize that we concede to the fact that there is a problem with the reliance on foreign labor workers. And based off our slides, which is with the mechanization and automation, it promotes locals to work in this industry because right now in this palm plantation industry, most of the things that we have to do right now is very much manual. And as Malaysians, since we've been like taught since a child that office jobs are better than doing physical hard labor, there's been an immense amount of stigmatization towards this industry. But if we do promote that this job doesn't really require really hard physical labor, then locals are going to be more keen to this job and actually do realize that this is one of the job aspects that pays sufficiently and is also enjoyable throughout the whole process. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation, Scholar Sri Putri. Let's give them a clap.
Thank you.
Now, I would like to invite the fifth team, SBP Integrasi Quantum.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum and a pleasant afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 10th Fully Residential Schools International Symposium, FRSIS 2022, here in Sekolah Dr. Abdul Razak, Seda, Seremban, with the theme From Pandemic to Endemic. We are from SBP Integrasi Kuantan Intech are assigned to Subteam 5 on economic recovery rising from Rubbles, and our focus is on the tourism sector in Malaysia. Before that, let me introduce Intech team members. I am Zikra Anas, the team moderator, and I am here to help Mia Marsha, our team presenter, to present our introduction. And alongside of us are Nurin Edina, the repertoire, Sakuna Naim, the technical assistant, and last but not least, Miss Aiza, our teacher advisor. Economic recovery rising from the rubbles. We are focusing on the tourism sector. So, I'm going to highlight definition of some words for clearer understanding. Pandemic. Pandemic is a situation where a disease exists in almost all of the area in the world. Endemic, however, is a situation or condition where a disease becomes very common and regularly found in a particular area. Economic. Economic is the study of how a country's wealth is made or used. Tourism is a business that provides services like transportation, places to stay, and entertainment during holidays. Rising is a positive improvement from a current situation. And lastly, rubble. Rubble is the effect from a damage. We in tech are presenting on the economy of the tourism sector rising in this endemic after the damage affecting the tourism economy during pandemic. And our problem statement is Malaysia tourism economy, airlines and hotels businesses in Malaysia economy rubbles during pandemic, and Malaysia tourism sector economy recovery done by airlines and hotels in this endemic. And our research questions are: one, what were the economic damages pandemic had done to airlines and hotels? Two, what have the airlines and hotels done in this endemic to rise from the damage? And three, how are the turnovers and return on investment of the tourism sector in Malaysia during this endemic? And our objectives are: one is to identify the damages happened to the tourism sector during pandemic. Two is to see how the tourism sector is affected due to pandemic. Three is to share some ways how the tourism sector rises from the damage in this endemic. And four is to share the economic recovery of the tourism sector in Malaysia. Ladies and gentlemen, in order to obtain our objectives, the methods that we used for the research were reading and watching tourism-related news on newspapers, television, and social medias. We also distributed a brief questionnaire. Our questionnaire was a set of questions on airlines and hotels services before pandemic and during endemic in a Google form where we distributed to our friends and family members. So, for further analysis and findings, I'll pass to Mia to present our case study. Over to you, Mia.
Thank you so much, Anas, for that amazing introduction. Hello, Assalamu alaikum, and a very pleasant afternoon I bid to everyone present online and in this room. I am Mia Marsha, the team presenter, will explain further our analysis and findings from our research for From Pandemic to Endemic with the economic recovery rising from the rubbles, focusing on the tourism sector in Malaysia. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, students and teachers, as well as fellow judges, I am going to do this by pointing out the economic recovery for the airlines and the hotels. I am going to start by analyzing what the 2-year pandemic had done to the hotels and the airlines. So, ladies and gentlemen, as for the transportation, focusing on airlines, during the 2-year pandemic, there was no cross-border. This no cross-border had caused economic damage to airlines as there was no business for that solid 2-year pandemic, meaning there was no income, no turnover for the airlines. Now, another major economic trouble to airlines during the pandemic was the maintenance cost of the airport accumulated. The damage was airport bore higher liabilities, expenses became more than their income, more outflow with no inflow. Another damage airport faced during the pandemic was businesses at airports were forced to shut down, giving airports no side income, nothing to support any loopholes. This resulting majority of the airline staff lose their jobs as airlines couldn't keep them. Now, let me share the 2-year pandemic troubles affecting places to stay, the hotels. Ladies and gentlemen, the lockdown order by the government had made hotels had no guests for more than 2 years. That gave hotels no income, no turnover during the duration of the 2-year pandemic. Now, another major economic trouble to hotels during the pandemic was the maintenance cost of the hotels accumulates. The expenses became more than their income. Hotels' liabilities became high, and not only that, hotels' facilities, fixtures, and fittings were deteriorating, causing hotels to handle more cost and expenses. This, ladies and gentlemen, resulting majority of the hotel staff lose their jobs as hotels couldn't keep them. Ladies and gentlemen, from our questionnaire that was responded by 157 respondents aged 16 to 50 years old, these are our findings. For the questions about traveling, from 157 respondents, 80% respondents answered they always traveled before the pandemic. And now, during this pandemic, 51% respondents always traveled. This when we found out that before the pandemic, that 64% of the respondents always used airline services to travel. And now, during this very short period of 9-month pandemic, 84% respondents always traveled using airline services. This is an increase of 20% of respondents who used airline services to travel during this pandemic. When asked of the reasons, one of the reasons given by the respondents on why they always travel using airline services during this pandemic is because airline ticket prices are affordable compared to before the pandemic. Airlines provide more and better services offer during this pandemic. And now, during this pandemic, there are more interesting airline promotions that are made by the airlines. Not only that, there are more flight trip schedules to various destinations and more trips are open to holiday destinations. Ladies and gentlemen, there were respondents also said that flight booking is easy before the pandemic flight booking is easy and more customer friendly during this pandemic. So, ladies and gentlemen, the airlines, everyone is moving fast on their economic recovery in this pandemic. So they use airline services more. With this, it helps airlines by giving airlines good turnover and return on investments. Next, we asked about staying in hotels. 59% respondents answered they always stayed in hotels before the pandemic. And now, during this pandemic, 52% respondents always stayed in hotels. One of the reasons given by the respondents was the hotel prices are quite affordable due to hotel packages and services offer are more and better. The respondents also said that there are more hotel promotions during this pandemic, and some respondents also said that hotel booking is easy and more customer friendly during this pandemic. Ladies and gentlemen, before the pandemic, phone call booking was not entertained by most hotels. But now, during this pandemic, bookings through phone call is also easy and more customer friendly for customers. Ladies and gentlemen, so to conclude our findings on the sub-theme Economic Recovery Rising from the Rubbles, where we, InTech, focus on the tourism sector, airlines, and the hotels. As for the airlines, what they did to rise from the economic rubbles are 1. Airlines offered more promotions and better package services to attract more income. 2. Airlines made more easy and customer-friendly bookings to increase their sales. And 3. Airlines provide more flight schedules to various destinations and more trips destinations to various places to boost their economy. As for the hotels, what they did to rise from the pandemic rubbles are 1. Hotels offer more package services to boost their economy. 2. Hotels give more promotions to attract more income. And 3. Hotels made easy and customer-friendly online and phone call bookings to increase their sales. Ladies and gentlemen, we are sure tourism sector return on investment and turnover will be back on track and better soon. 9 months of pandemic, tourism sector economy has been rising from the economic damage that the pandemic had caused. Even though slowly but surely, may Malaysia economy become better than before the pandemic in the nearest future. With that, I rest my case. Thank you.
Thank you, Mia, for the splendid explanation. Now I'll pass over to the moderator to continue with the current session. Over to you, moderator.
Thank you. Now I would like to invite participants to ask questions.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First and foremost, I really like your presentations. My question is that, so you stated that during the pandemic, there are lots of hotels and services. So can you explain by what do you mean by better hotels and services? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. So what do we mean by better hotel services? What do we mean is not by hotel prices being more cheaper. No. What do we mean was that before the pandemic, the hotels, if we want to use the Wi-Fi at the hotels, we need to ask the front desk for the password. But now that they make better services, they provide the password for the Wi-Fi by sticking them on papers in rooms of guests or on the front desk. And apart from that, hotels also provides more welcome drinks to guests who comes to their hotels during this pandemic. Thank you very much.
Okay. First of all, thank you for that very clear presentation. My name is Farah, a representative from SSP. My question to you is, can you further elaborate on how do you increase bookings of hotels when people are still scared of the COVID-19 outbreak?
So thank you for the question. So how do we increase the bookings? Is that, as we all know, during this pandemic, the government had made a lot of improvements and better sanitations at places to encourage the people to come out, to invest more in their country's economy, in the tourism sector economy. So in my very personal opinion, the hotels can make promotions by showing to the customers, showing to the guests that they make daily sanitations to the hotels so that the guests, the customers wouldn't be worried when they want to go and stay at the hotels. I really hope that answers your question. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the interesting presentation. Now let's give a brief pause for the next presenter to prepare.
I hope you enjoy our presentation. With that, thank you.
Sorry, do banyak tadi. Now, I would like to invite Sekolah Tunku Abdul Rahman to present.
Detroit, where the evolving auto industry is a vital part of the economy.
That they have a good plan for the economy going forward.
School shortages are on the rise, with the number of occupations suffering having almost doubled.
Last night, the UK economy faced a major financial crisis. Gas prices nationwide have recent concerns that more economic pain may be on the horizon.
Biden is set to speak shortly about the economy as concerns grow that the U.S. could be heading toward a recession.
And that's led the gasoline prices in the U.S. falling as well. It's just at a level that they feel like they can't balance their budgets.
From the video, as you can see, well, do you all think it is possible for the economy to recover? If you say no, well, let's get through my presentation first. I, Muhammad Danish bin Ahmad Jozaili, am from Sekolah Tunku Abdul Rahman, and my team is here to present on the topic, which is COVID-19 economic recovery rising from the rubbles. This is the outline of our presentation. Well, to stand here in front of all of you, our team has researched using two methods. Number one, primary research, which basically means that we collected our data on our own by making surveys and interviews, as you can see with our teachers and other people like our alumni, which are very knowledgeable in economy. And secondly, we use secondary research, which collects data from already existing data, like for example, articles, videos, and news, and many more. So we did it because to know the context of the issue we are facing, to pinpoint the exact factors of the issue, and to identify what solutions are best for this problem. Well, I think that is enough about us. Let's get right into economy. What is it? It is an area of production, distribution, trade, and also the consumption of goods like foods, and services like healthcare. There are some important economic terms that you would need to know about to better understand our presentation. Number one, inflation, which is basically the sudden increase in prices which happens because of the demand is too high and the supply is too low. And number two, recession, which is the significant decline in economic activity, which is caused by, for example, stoppage of work. And number three, exchange rate, which influences trade the most between two countries because, well, if low money value and high money value determines whether a country wants to trade with other countries more or less. So with this, we conducted a small survey to know the answer to the question, was the economy heading towards a brighter future before 2019? And as you can see, many seem to think so because, well, the factors that affect the economy was in the green and healthy even before 2019. So what happened? Well, yet here we are in 2022, and it's even worse than it was before. Well, it doesn't take a genius to know what happened because, well, even frogs in the well know. Well, it's all because of COVID-19. Right now, we are experiencing fluctuation in the economy because of it. So what happens when the economy fluctuates? Number one, consumption of goods and services cannot happen because people don't have a steady flow of income. And number two, problems of imports and exports that occur will of course affect the country's production, distribution, and trade. And number three, certain investors will not invest in certain countries because they are uncertain whether they will gain profits or experience losses when they invest in a country which is damaged. So how does exactly the economy fluctuate? Number one, low or high productivity allows firms to produce less or greater output for the same level of input. And number two, the total demand for and supply of the nation's goods and services influences if inflation happens or not. And number three, levels of employment are considered to have a positive or negative effect on the production of certain countries. Well, what are the effects of the COVID-19 that made us this way? Well, companies that could not sustain themselves had to fire their own workers, and although this helped in some way, although it's short term, but well,
it caused unemployment and also low production. Because of this, many more companies will experience bankruptcy and thus no production and exporting happening. This will eventually lead to the country be forced to borrow money from other countries or organizations like the IMF. So, but if this was the only issue that we will face, well, it would be simple. But of course, there are other issues that affect the economy as well. That is governments. Of course, it's unstable because, well, the low government action that is being taken because, well, the sudden surge in problems that they need to solve, like for example, the increasing mortality rates. Because of this, less action and attention is given towards the economy side of things. Well, that's that. But did you know that the economy freedom in annual report made by Center for Market Education stated that Malaysia is ranked 49th in economic freedom. To know this in more detail, some countries, some news states that some countries will go bankrupt because of the food crisis that is happening. So we concluded by our research, well, our interviews with other people, that other people, other countries experience this problem. Oh, sorry. Lah, baca lah. So by our research, interviews and such, we concluded that the countries that face this problem, well, depend too much on other countries to actually prosper. Well, take Malaysia, for example. We mostly import our rice from Thailand. This is very concerning because, well, we eat rice on a daily basis. So when Thailand got hit by COVID-19, of course, their exporting activities stopped. And Malaysia is forced to trade with other countries that has higher money value, and thus profits are less and less, and economy, well, goes down. Some other countries other than Malaysia are Belarus, Armenia, and Kyrgyzstan and Lithuania. Well, they depend too much on Russia, and unfortunately, something did happen to Russia other than COVID-19 outbreak that happened. This happened, wars. Well, they had a war. This, in my opinion, well, it was a very big setback to the economy of the world, because number one, not only did we lost a huge amount of natural resources and time needed to actually focus on COVID-19, but we also lost a large amount of human lives that could actually fuel our economy back on its feet. Did you know that that chicken prices suddenly experienced a hike because, well, Ukraine is the main export of corn and grain, which is used for food kibble, used to raise chicken. Because of their exporting activities stopping, countries cannot mass produce, the food used, and thus the production of chicken is less and inflation happens. Do you all see what's happening? It's all connected. One problem creates other problems, and those problems creates other problems. But there is still hope because solutions can be thought of and measures can be taken. So what are the best solutions that we can give right now is number one, for the unemployment problem and also the government inactivity problem, is that the government needs to put together a new stimulus package that can actually stimulate the economy in the new budget. Because, well, how exactly the economy can get stimulated by the stimulus package? Well, because stimulus packages actually how it actually cuts taxes and also interest rates and also increases government spending to lift it out of recession, to make people work and decrease the unemployment rates. And number two, solution for the dependence of the country's economy. Number one, the first and foremost effective step that we need to take is that we should produce raw materials locally and not depend too much on exporting activities. And number two, we should increase our education and population as to produce much more talents to fill up each sector in the country. So in conclusion, do you all think that the economy can go back to the way it was or better? Well, for me, yes, absolutely. Because number one, COVID-19 is slowly dying out. And number two, technology is far more better than it was yesterday. Because even Nikola Tesla would be impressed by how far we have gone. And number three, not to mention the cooperative effort from all parties, which also directly correlates to the main solution of every global crisis that we need to face from now on: unity. This is the reason why I'm here, why you're all here in front of me right now, because we together survived by working together, and thus, like Martin Luther King Jr. said, we must learn to live together as brothers or perish together as fools. With that, I end my presentation.
Now, I would like to invite participants to ask questions.
So, thank you very much for that presentation. I really enjoyed it. So, in one of your slides, you highlighted there's an issue regarding our government, which is the instability, or in my understanding, is corruption that is present in the government, which is money laundering, debt, etc. My question to you is, how do we as a nation going to improve our economic stability without the help of our government, hence the instability?
Can you guys please rephrase your question?
Since you said that there's an issue with our government, my question to you is, how do we improve our economic stability as a nation without the government's help, since there's a problem with the government?
Well, like I said, we need to increase our education and population. Well, let's focus on the increasing education part. Well, by increasing our education, we can actually fill up each jobs in each sector, well, because to produce our own technology that is far more advanced than other countries. That's why countries like China, for example, they are better off than Malaysia, who didn't even start COVID-19. They had to borrow technology to produce their own vaccines, which cost God knows how much. Well, which actually, really influenced the amount of money that we need to use. And thus, if we had scientists, we had smart people, more talents filling each job sector in the country, well, this problem wouldn't be existent at all. It would not be non-existent. Does that answer your question?
You mentioned about unity in your last slide. Is one of the factors. Um, for all this. So I just have a question for you. As a boarding school, how do you think boarding school promotes unity among all races? What is your opinion on that?
So, Tess, so how does boarding schools promote in unity for other? This is boarding schools allow students to be in a situation where they um, react with different situations. So meaning they rely on each other. It doesn't matter what race you are, or maybe from different races. Like for example, whether you're Malay, or Chinese, or you're Indian, in a boarding school, your life is actually uh, united with the academics, the curriculum, and such. So does that satisfy your question, or?
Can I ask further question based on that? This is 2A, not the third question. Okay, so in your school is basically all male, right? And how many percent are Malay?
100%.
Hmm?
All of them are Malay.
Almost 100%.
Yeah.
So how based on that, so you mentioned the Chinese, Indian, and all, and how does that promote unity? Because you only basically one type, male Malay. So how does that promote unity?
Maybe you can suggest any programs that your school had done before that you went out.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So the boarding school promotes this by, well, student exchange. The most simple programs that you can think of, that I can think of, is, well, student exchange with other schools, and, well, to know more about other cultures and such. Student exchange programs basically promote students while learning together with other people with new experiences. Well, I think that is the most simple example of how it promotes unity.
Because recently our school had made a collaboration with schools around their area, which consists of other races, and so we share our opinions on topics that we have discussed in school. It was a collaboration between our school and schools from across Kinta Utara, from our district, regarding academics on physics and biology.
Thank you so much for the informative presentation, Sekolah Tunku Abdul Rahman. We have reached the conclusion of the presentation, ladies and gentlemen. We would like to thank all the presenters for the fascinating presentation and the judges for the time. Timekeeper, please collect the evaluation files from the judges. And thank you to everyone in the crowd for contributing so actively. Thank you for your time.